Well, I want to welcome you and every one of you. This means so much to Joy and to all of us. What a great gathering. They've met many friends, and some of them are here today. I would like to introduce to you Declan and Pat Tyner, who are from Cork, Ireland, came all the way here. They met Skip and Joy on the QE2, and they met in Papua, New Guinea. And then Sue and Holly True are here from Barbados. They are part of the founding members of the Turtle Tracks family, and Skip and Joy have worked with them for the last 10 years. And then Chris and Cammie Green are here from Buffalo, New York. Chris has been a friend and legal counsel to Skip for 30 years, and he introduced the Mosses to Abaco, which was the beginning of their t-shirt business. And then Doug Bowes, who's also a friend of mine, is here from Covewood Lodge near Big Moose Lake in the Adirondacks. And Skip began vacationing with his parents on Big Moose Lake when he was just a child. Doug? And then Janice Whiting is here from Winter Park. She's a QE2 traveling companion along with her husband Louis. And there's a photograph of them and the Mosses at the Taj Mahal. And the Honorable Henry Cashin is here from Washington, D.C. He was a fellow graduate with Skip from Brown University and a Psi U fraternity member. And Joy has some dear friends here from her boarding school, the Academy of the Holy Names in Tampa, including Ann Curtis, Rita McKenna, Catherine Likes, and Patty Willing. Thank you all for your travels. And I'd also like to give special recognition to Greg McIntosh, who was a fellow Chody with Skip. Where'd you go, Greg? There he is. Okay. Greg, for many years, even going back to Choke days, has been a loyal friend and a supporter, and he was with Skip when he went to be with the Lord. Connie Robinson is here, and Connie has been a housekeeper, and she's been like family for the last 20 plus years. And a few years ago, when the doctor told Connie she needed to retire, she said, "But I have to keep Mr. and Mrs. Moss because they need me." And then a very special attendee is Dr. Bruce Murray and his sister and nurse Sandy Murray. They have a concierge practice here in Vero Beach, and we feel that they gave Skip a bonus of 9 months after his cardiac event in April last year. In his office, he was at the right place in the right time and in view of heaven to save Skip's life. Dr. Murray? Thank you. And then Annette Tedesco and her wife Marcy are a part of the welcome team today. They assisted Skip and Joy for the last 18 months in their business, and now they're working with Joy, and they say they've never had as much fun working.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'll start at the beginning. We were on the QE2, and we arrived in Papua New Guinea at some unearthly hour of the morning, and it was so hot and so uncomfortable. Now, normally we would hire transport ourselves and do our own thing when we go on shore. So we arrived, and to discover there weren't any cars to hire. There wasn't any transport available around the island. So my husband said, "What are we going to do now?" So we saw a policeman doing duty, and Declan went over to him. And Declan is a Rotarian, and he asked the policeman where was the Rotary Club. And the policeman said, yes, there is a Rotary Club, and I'm a Rotarian. So I said, that's wonderful. Now we have a problem. We're here in Papua New Guinea. We can't get around or anything. What would you suggest? So a friend of Declan's, who's also Rotarian in Ireland, and a group of 6 of them had come to Papua New Guinea, and Declan knew about that. So they had set up a diabetic clinic. So the policeman actually remembered that, and he said, okay, he said, come with me. So off Declan went, and I stood on the side waiting, hoping he'd come back. And he did. And he had the policeman said, in about 10 minutes, I will have the diabetic ambulance here and a driver to take you around the island. So I kind of looked at him, and he said, yeah. And I said, okay, that would be wonderful. So then I duly saw Skip and Joy standing nearby. So I said, they're probably in the same position for the morning. They probably don't have transport or anything, so I'll offer them, if they wanted to join us, that they'd be most welcome. So I went over anyway, and I said it, and they kind of looked at me, and then they said, oh yes, that sounds good, but we have organised a tour in the afternoon. So I said, that's fine. Well, if you want to come for the morning, rather than waiting around until the afternoon, have a think about it. Declan should be back shortly. That was as much as I said. So Declan duly arrived with the ambulance driver and the ambulance. And we got into it, all 4 of us. I'd say Joy was rather nervous about the whole thing. And it was fine. We were just starting to settle. The driver was there, Declan was in the front, and I said, come on, let's go in now. And next thing, the back door of the ambulance opened, and 2 more guys jumped in. So Joy duly turned to me and she said, are we safe? She said, do you know what we're doing? Do we know what we're doing? And I said, no problem, no problem. And then she said, don't they still kind of kill people here and eat people here? Are you sure we're okay? I said, Joy, yes. I said, Declan has it all sorted. I said, a fellow Rotarian has organised everything. Let's have a wonderful day. Now I said, we can drop you back for your 2 o'clock tour if you wish, but I said, we're doing everything on the island that is to be done. So if we get on together, and if you want to stay on, please do. And the rest is history. We're friends ever since. So, and without saying, we will miss Skip terribly.
How can I better that? Poor Joy, when I think of that, she had visions of either being sold into slavery or being part of the main dish, because there were head hunters on the island up to a few years before that. Basically, Skip, that was 2006. We joined them. We were going around the world on the QE2. We had met them on quite a few occasions on other cruises. Then they came to Ireland. We brought them to our own home in Cork. Then on another occasion they came to Dublin, and we spent 2 days in Dublin. We showed them basically Oscar Wilde's home. We were inside some Georgian buildings. We travelled the hallowed halls of Trinity College, and there's a few lovely photographs of Skip with his Viking helmet, and he roaring out to people as we passed on a trip. We had lunch with my niece Clodagh McKenna, and in turn we ended up with some great Irish music. We've been very good friends. We have a small place over in Sarasota, and anytime we come there, which is twice a year, we would pop across to Skip and Joy. They're a lovely couple, and I dearly miss Skip. We watched it video, the actual ceremony itself, but I miss Skip. He was a thorough gentleman, and we got on very well, and thank you.
Joy, Holly and I are very pleased to be here today. And we've come from Barbados. We met Skip and Joy when they came to Barbados on a cruise, and they went into our shop in Chattel Village, and they saw a lot of my mum's artwork. And Skip, in his normal entrepreneurial way, said to our lovely member of staff, Kathy Ann, who's a great enthusiast, which are Jill Walker's best-selling prints or images, and she gave them 3. So they went home and they produced many products, the tiles and cocktail napkins and things, and they sent them down to me at the office a little time later. And I loved them, and we started to carry them. And then whenever Joy and Skip came on cruises or we were up here, we would get together. But they became huge friends. They've been to lots of personal events like weddings, and they came on my mum's 90th birthday cruise many years later. And then in 2012, I was telling Joy how I was thinking about writing a children's book. I was going to call it Turtle Tracks, and it was going to be about a turtle called Tilly, who was going to be nesting. Because we didn't have a book on turtles in Barbados for children. And she said, well, I think you should send it up here because it could maybe sell here. So I did. It took me about a year to do it. And then we started with 1 book and 1 toy, and I sent her, we would go into our warehouse in Barbados, repackage the boxes, stick labels on, send it up to Florida. And those orders got a bit bigger, and my husband and I did it after hours. We were hotter and hotter, and we were saying, oh God, why are we doing this? And then it finally got to the point where we were sending things directly. Skip sourced local printers, and we now have, I'm just working on my 10th book. Joy and Skip have just been amazing at getting the line launched. And we were just in the Bahamas researching for a shark book, and we met several people who had bought the series, not just shop owners, but actual customers, which was exciting. So it's very far-reaching. And now my daughter Holly is being part of the project as well. So I have a lot to thank Skip for, because he really drove, he just was so enthusiastic. He just was on the go all the time, as all of you know. He never sat still, and he always had a new idea. And I was very thankful that Joy included us towards the end of his life, and that I was able to tell him that the latest book that I'm doing, which is called Gators Galore, is going to be dedicated to him. And I've actually drawn Skip and Joy and myself and my husband into the book. So when you get that, it's going to be finished in about a month's time. I didn't quite finish for this trip. But I think it's going to be, he got the message, he understood it, and he told me that he was honored, and I was very glad to know that he received that message. So yeah, we're going to miss him, but we have lots to keep going on, and lots to, we're not going to sit back and say, oh dear, we're going to drive Joy, and Holly's going to be on board. So we have a lot to be thankful for Skip. And we will miss him, but we're going to keep going in his honor. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
We were fortunate to know Skip and Joy when they moved in next door to us. And I can't remember the exact year, but I think it was about 2010, around there. So they were neighbors, and they became good friends. Skip and I had sort of similar political beliefs, so we had many discussions concerning that. We're both going to miss Skip, and we spend time all the time we can with Joy. And I know Margie, my wife, feels the same way. So, Skip, if you're out there, we're going to miss you, man. Next.
So you can't come from Buffalo, New York, and not say a few words about Skip. I'll start by saying Cammie and I are here from Buffalo, And we weren't able to go to the service. We were out of town. So, and Joy mentioned this, we jumped at the chance. And I must say, Earl, that was one wonderful eulogy. And I saw it remotely, and if you haven't seen it, you got to catch it. It's like it was today, but it was the whole service was fabulous and heartwarming. So I practice law in Buffalo, New York, and I'm a corporate transactional lawyer. And in 1989, a gentleman by the name of John Peter, who was an accountant, called me up and said, I have a client, I think he needs your help. He owns a business in Lockport, he's thinking of selling it. And I know you do that kind of work. He's kind of an interesting guy. So you want to have lunch with him? So I had lunch with him. I called John and I said, interesting is not the only word. He said, it started a 30-some year relationship that went well beyond the traditional legal relationship of lawyer and client, which was good and successful. We sold the business and other matters. But as you know, you can't know Skip and just have a boring, regular legal relationship. It became much more than that, and a lot of it's already been said, but I'm going to give you a couple of stories just to add or probably reinforce the stories that have been told here and elsewhere. It's about the human element, about Skip and his large personality and his ability to reach out. And you might not think you're going to have any common interests, and you have all sorts of them. Because that's the way he rolled. He would find things. And it wasn't hard, because I'll give you some examples. Sports. Now, I hope none of you will say differently, but he was an avid Buffalo Bills and Buffalo Sabres fan. Now, maybe when he moved here, he'll say, well, I kind of like the Dolphins or whatever, but there was many a call. Did you watch the hockey game? You were probably there. They lost. I'm sorry for you. Commiserate with you. The Bills, through their career of very, very good, and they were very terrible, and now good again. Always there. Voicemail, remembrances. Cars. Skip loved cars. My father was a Pierce Arrow collector. Skip found out about that. Well, he never forgot that. Did you ever get a clippings in the mail from Skip? Pictures of Pierce Arrows. Pierce Arrows were a beautiful old historic car in the teens and 20s and 30s that were manufactured in Buffalo. And Skip, was a Buffalo person, and he's great on history and loved cars. Travel. We heard so many great stories, and they've been told here that Joy and Skip went on. Just absolutely wonderful. Grace Church. So I knew of Grace Church, but I didn't know that much about it. But he knew that we have a church and that we're very active in Buffalo. So he would bring me into his conversations as he was trying to find a way to keep that church from being sold or going to some other, or going dormant, because it's a beautiful, beautiful church. So we often talked about preservation, because I'm involved in some preservation efforts. He said, you should get involved in this. You should make this happen. So even right up to near the end of his death, he's saying, I'm going to do something with that church. And of course, they were able to have the service there. It was absolutely beautiful. And the book, of course, that wonderful book, he was so proud of. So proud of. And Hopetown, Abaco, Bahamas, which was mentioned. My parents, many years ago, bought a very rustic place in Hopetown, which is in Little Abaco, Elbow Key. And it just happened, we sold that place, but we kind of grew up there, so it's a special place for Cammie and me. But Skip found out about that, and of course, he developed that, and I introduced him to the Mr. Vernon Malone, who became a good friend of Joy and Skip's, and all the good that came out of that Bahamas relationship and stories. And I think you saw it on a few T-shirts too, probably more than a few, one of which we still have. And there's a heartwarming story. Mr. Vernon Malone, native Hopetowner, is the grocery store manager. He owns his own store, modest store, in a modest place. But he's also the lay minister in the church. He marries people and gives sermons. And so Joy and Skip got to know Vernon, and there was a hurricane. I think it was Hurricane Floyd. And Vernon's place was destroyed, really badly damaged. Well, Mr. Vernon made the bread on the island, and that was super important. You know, you gotta have good bread, and he could make really good bread. He's still doing it to this day. That was a long time ago. Skip shows up with an oven, a new oven for him, which was something that Vern couldn't afford. Just another sign of that generosity earlier we were talking about. Last story, Cammie and I were down in Antigua this year, and we were at English Harbor. Never been there. A beautiful spot. And I remember something about turtle tracks and Antigua, so we just started walking around. There's a little gift shop, and I walked into the gift shop, and there was turtle tracks. So I took a picture, which I have on my camera, several pictures, so I had that. And then I looked back, because shortly thereafter I got a call from Joy. I took that picture on January 30th. So I thought there's got to be some symbolism or maybe you could help me out with that, sort that out, but that was the day, of course, that he passed away. So, in sum, we will miss Skip for so many things: his passion, his personality, his friendship, his storytelling, his enthusiasm, as in we all saw it in different ways, but certainly made my life richer and Cammie's life richer for being more than just a boring legal relationship. So, thank you.
I'll be brief as I can be. For those that know me, not generally a man of few words, but neither was Skip. And I usually find myself sitting back and listening to Skip. I always enjoyed my time with him, and I had the luxury of meeting Joy and Skip just north of 10 years ago, I believe. I was working in the tax field at the time, and there were a lot of first meetings that have come and go in my memory, but there's some that have stuck, and that one is at the top of the list. I have far from a photographic memory, but I will always remember not just our first meeting together, and his energy and his passion for life was contagious, I found. But watching Skip and Joy together was a real joy for me, and he brought so much to my life, as he has, seems like, to so many people sitting here today, and it's a pleasure to be with you all. I wish, obviously, we were here for a different reason, but I just will conclude by saying, he added so much to the world. He added so much to my life. He will be missed greatly, but never forgotten.
Albert sends this message: there never was, nor will there ever be another Skippy. A better friend you will never have. In Skippy you have something of everything. A complex composite of unique characteristics such as loyal, solid work ethic, unconventional yet polished, expensive taste but frugal, spiritual and true to his faith. He loved to travel, especially on the magnificent ships that plied the oceans, first class only. Having run a large company to making T-shirts in his garage, it was all about doing a first-rate job. For Skippy, excellence was a journey, not a destination. He was committed to Joy, the love of his life. They did everything together. Skip had so many friends, and I was proud to be counted among them. Our friendship covered some 68 years and was as close as the days before his death as it was in 1955. Not everyone does, but Skippy made a difference. He will be sorely missed, and the Lord certainly got the best in receiving Skippy. Godspeed, Albert Hanser. Sam? Mr. Sam Beach.
Mr. Skip, because I don't have a jacket on. I'm either here or I never hear the end of it, so apologies, Skip. But I go back a long way with Skip. I met him in 1953 when we were students at the Choate School. And he was a year ahead of me at Choate, and usually upperclassmen don't have a lot to say to younger classmen. We became great friends. And, we didn't see each other for 40 years until I came down to Vero Beach, and we reconnected and had a lot of fun. But I have his class yearbook here. Bill Caldwell, who was a Choate with us, lent me, and so we talk about generosity. Well, there it is in his class book, Most Generous, Skip Moss. I don't know what this is, but it says socialite Skip Moss. I'm not sure what it means. And then he was best dressed. So Skippy was quite a guy. He wasn't perfect, but he was a great friend. We had a lot of fun reminiscing about our days at Choate and the early days here at Vero Beach. We'll all miss him. He was one of a kind, and he's lucky to, frankly, to have Joy. That's for sure. And he was a great dog lover. The dog treats, all those things that he thought up and was doing. Was a marvelous guy. His mind was always working, whether his body sort of wore out, but his mind was always top notch. Anyway, we miss him, we love him, and we have lots of great memories.
Thank you.
I just had a couple things to say real quick about Skip and Joy. First, I'm a little nervous in here with all the attorneys, but anyway, I'm sure you're all great people. Skip came to our practice just over a year ago, and his main reason for coming was for his wife, Joy. And in typical fashion, as I found to learn about Skip, he was most concerned about Joy, and he wanted excellent medical care for her. So he went ahead and signed Joy up with our practice here in Vero, and later on I asked him, Skip, why don't you sign up? And he goes, well, I don't know if you're good enough to be my physician or not. So eventually I convinced him I was, but I think it was really because my sister Sandy, she's on our end, she's not my wife, she's my sister. She and I are in the practice, there's the two of us. But she always kept snacks out in the office. We have a refrigerator with drinks and snacks, and Skip used to come by and visit all the time. And I came to find out the reason why. It wasn't anything to do with me, but he wanted our snacks. So that's one thing that I don't think anybody mentioned. Skip definitely liked his snacks. But over the last year that I had the pleasure and the honor and really the blessing of knowing Skip, and as well as Joy, and being at his bedside, as a person, as a physician, you think about trying to help people and help heal people. But the reality is, knowing Skip, he taught me more about living and how to live than I've learned from anybody probably ever in just that short time. Such an honorable man, a patriot, and I just feel so blessed to have been part of his life. I was so happy when he came and sought my counsel about going on some trips in the last several months as he became more ill, and I encouraged him to go. Just go ahead and go and live. And I feel so good because he and Joy made some fabulous last trips in the last year of his life. And the last thing I would say is Skip taught me, and I'm sure a lot of other people, when you face adversity, which he did. Unfortunately, this last year was one thing after another. But as he faced adversity with his own health, he always looked at the bright side of things and would find some good in whatever it was that he and I were discussing. So I just want to say what a fabulous, fabulous man, and how blessed we have been to interact with him, and we look forward to our future years with his wonderful wife, Joy. Thank you so much.
Skip added color and flavor to the voyage, and travels without him were somehow less interesting. He always approached a new location or an individual, who usually became a good friend very quickly, with his engaging style and inquiring mind and his powers of observation. On board a ship, his contacts ranged from the most junior staff member to the captain. All were interacted with at the same level as he sought to build a picture of how things really worked. His own views on how things should work were often an offer. While not exactly a quiet American, he was a very well-traveled one and brought his particular sense of humor and interest to many places around the world. One day, Skip and Joy were visiting the port of Fowey in Cornwall, albeit not one of his favored Cunard ships. We met them and took them to a Cornish pub where, in response to a few questions from Skip, he learnt that the landlord's son was actually at sea on a Cunard ship as an actor. If you don't ask the questions, you'll never get the answer, was Skip's approach to life. On a trip to Iguazu Falls in Brazil, Argentina, Skip was convinced that nothing could exceed his Niagara Falls. He did graciously admit that the falls were on a different scale, and he proceeded to very much enjoy the visit, even in a torrential rain. We have very fond memories of travels with Skip and Joy, including on a visit to Cornwall. We went to the local church, which dates from the 14th century. Skip pointed out that one of the columns was out of alignment, something I had not noticed in the 10 years we had lived there. And he has been proved absolutely correct. During recent renovation work, they discovered that some of the columns are sinking as the foundations have been worn down to just sand after so many years. His powers of observation were second to none. Skip was unique, one of nature's true gentlemen, and we will miss him very much. David and Sarah Short.
I'm Sally Daly. I was Skip's friend, but I first started off as his real estate broker. And you think that's a good thing? Well, it wasn't always that way with Skip. Started off, they didn't have a great experience with whomever they were working with to sell their home. And I think Joy called me. And Skip and I, we just got along like peanut butter and jelly. He could be delightful, exasperating, charming, witty, always very well dressed. I've been in the business for about 20 years, and lots of clients get a place in your heart. Well, Skip and Joy have the dubious distinction of, I think it was 5 or 6 or 7 contracts on houses that we thought were going to be right, and I kept saying, I don't know, Skip, I don't know if this is right. And we finally found the right one. And after all that time, you would think I would never want to hear from him again. All those contracts, and we finally found the right house. The only thing Skip really cared about were a couple of things. Number one, we'd have to make sure there was a spot for the photos of all the ships and the posters. We'd go in with a measuring tape for that big old machine. I forget what he called it. We always had to do that. And mostly he wanted to make sure it was a place where Joy could be happy. And we finally found it. And he wasn't still quite sure. And I said, be happy, you're in the right spot. And he's the only client that came. Each house had to have a door that would fit the door with a portal that you brought with you. So I like to think of him looking through the portal, and he's waiting for you to join. Thank you. I will miss him.
Thank you, Sally. And to explain that portal, we have a message from Jim and Joanne Ryan from Hilton Head, and they write, well, Jim writes, my wife Joanne and I met Skip and Joy on Cunard Line's QE2 on the World Cruise in January 2006. And he goes on to recount a number of very interesting stories, but one of them is that one day on board the QE2, a charity auction of QE2 memorabilia, country flags, navigational maps, and other items was announced. Skip was a super fan of anything that pertained to that ship. You would know this if you've ever visited his office. He could start a museum. He has amassed so much stuff. But on the day of the auction, Skip is seated front and center with his checkbook out, ready to bid. Skip didn't seem too interested in any of the items, but his eyes lit up when all of a sudden the auctioneer introduces an original porthole from the QE2. Skip had to have it. Let the bidding begin. Skip started off the bidding, but was soon outbid by, of all people, the Queen's Grill Maitre D'. The bidding paddle started flying. Skip kept at it. He wanted that porthole. Evil glances came at every bid. Tense moments followed. Eventually, he outbid the Maitre D' and won the honor of owning a solid steel, brass, and quadruple glass porthole from the QE2. Ownership is one thing, but getting your item home is another. And now the trouble begins, because the ship's porthole weighs about 230 pounds. Just kidding. But it was heavy enough that you couldn't easily carry it, and when you're trying to look cool and sophisticated. So Skip put it in a wheelchair to move it around. And to get the porthole off the ship, Skip had to enlist the head of security assistance to disembark discreetly. And special note, if you ever get to visit Skip's office, the porthole is mounted in the entrance door. It looks perfect. Good time, Skip. Thanks for the memories. We'll never forget you. We love you and we miss you. Jim and Joanne Ryle, Columbia, South Carolina.